slowly you know better, So COVID is again increasing. Hopefully, people will be cautious.
Yes,
You never
yes.
know. It's Krishna's plan, Prabhuji. So, so let us get going. I will just introduce Prabhuji to some new devotees are there this time. Some people are from India joining. That is very interesting. So there's 6 o'clock early morning. So uh, just those of you who do not know Prabhuji, I know very little, but I know certain things. Really, I am encouraged how Prabhuji finds time. So just to tell in few words, actually Prabhuji is a born devotee by birth. So you can imagine who can be a born devotee. You can get a glimpse of his previous life if you are reading and listening carefully. Who can born in a devotee family? So that's one thing. Being devotee from by birth, we can say that his parents are well devoted. They are in Vrindavan. No, they are serving his lordship there. And Prabhuji is a disciple of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj. So most of you know Maharaj in detail, and he has established lot of temples in India, and he was in US for some time. And other than that, Prabhuji is very active in preaching, and anybody interested, he takes the class, he clears the doubt. And another important part is we always think we do not have time. Either we are materially attached, or we are ignorant, or something is happening, or we are lazy. But you can, if you have seen through Prabhuji's, bio, spiritual bio, there are little glimpse you will get. He's running a business, and 20 places, 20 places or states that he has that branch, and he's managing 200, maybe employees, or many of the, it's running a business is not that easy. Of course, he has that qualification or attitude, but the beauty is there. Still, he finds time. One day I got up around 4 a.m. here, so I see some text message. I don't know whether that day Prabhuji slept, or he just texted me from somewhere, got up from sleep. So my guess is he will be hardly having, few hours of sleep per day, but we also once in a while sleep little. So when we do not have time, at least if time permits, we should hear a little bit from Prabhuji how he gets time, how he manages his time management is very important. So from that aspect, we have a lot to learn. And Prabhuji is is a very interesting speaker. He gives a lot of examples, quotes, verses, and it would be very interesting, and it would be, a lot of lessons for all of us to learn. And the topic is interesting. Prabhuji told something, and suddenly I was reading internet. I found something in Back to Godhead magazine this month. That thing, of course, I read one paragraph. After that, I have not gone back. So I thought that is the right topic, what Prabhuji was telling in line with. So let us welcome Prabhuji to the call, and then hopefully we'll be attentive. Whatever 1 hour time we have, 50 minutes talk, then 10 minutes question answer. Prabhuji, with this, with thank you so much for giving some time for us, and please welcome, and over to you now, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances to all the assembled devotees. I pray that we can have a nice, fruitful discussion today. So that this season, as Prabhuji mentioned, is Rath Yatra season. Actually, I just came back in Detroit area. We're having our Rath Yatra in 4 weeks. So we have a Rath Yatra picnic 4 weeks prior to our Rath Yatra date, in which we help, gather volunteers and organize all the different activities. And just came back from our picnic, so everybody is in a full festive mood of Rath Yatra, and we just passed our Puri Rath Yatra, of course, yeah, last week, and so I thought, in honor of that, and I'm very grateful to Prabhuji for inviting me into the Sangha and giving some opportunity to discuss Srila Prabhupada's books. I have no qualification to speak, but I'll try to repeat what I've heard from other senior devotees, and what Srila Prabhupada is writing in this Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we'll just chant the invocation prayers, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So that prayer is the invocation prayer when we read Chaitanya Charitamrita. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami starts virtually every chapter with that very beautiful prayer. So we'll read today, with your permission, from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 13, verse number 18. This pastime, for some reason, for me, is one of my favorite. This is actually the third time I'm discussing it in the last 3 weeks. I cannot get enough of this, so I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak on this topic. It's such a beautiful pastime and verse, and very instructive for us. Pastimes of the Lord and His devotees. They are meant to soothe the heart and to inspire us in devotional service. But the pastimes actually carry great lessons and important instructions for us. And so in every pastime, we can ask, what is it that I can apply in my day-to-day practice of devotional service? And yes, while the stories are very entertaining and interesting, there's always deep lessons that we can bring into our daily practice to help inspire us to propel forward in the path of devotional service. So we'll discuss that today, some practical tips that we can make. So this verse 18 of the 13th chapter of Madhya Lila reads, Mahaprabhu Sukha Paila Se Seva Dekhite, Mahaprabhu Ra Kripa Haila Se Seva Haite. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Upon seeing the king engaged in such menial service, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very happy. Simply by rendering this service, the king received the mercy of the Lord. Purport. Unless one receives the mercy of the Lord, he cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead or engage in his devotional service. A devotee has received even a small fraction of the mercy of the Lord can understand him. Others may engage in theoretical speculation to understand the Lord, but they cannot know anything about him. Although Maharaj Prataparudra was very eager to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord refused to see him. But when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw the king engaged in menial service for Lord Jagannath, he became very happy. Thus, the king became eligible to receive Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. If a devotee accepts Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the universal guru and Lord Jagannath as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is benefited by the combined mercy of Krishna and Guru. This is stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his instruction to Rupa Goswami, Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 19, verse 151. Brahmana Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jiva, Guru Krishna Prasade Paya Bhakti Lata Bija. The seed of devotional service fructifies and becomes a transcendental creeper. Finally, it reaches the lotus feet of the Lord in the spiritual sky. This seed is obtained by the mercy of the Lord and Guru. By the Lord's mercy, one gets the association of a bona fide Guru, and by the mercy of the Guru, one gets a chance to render devotional service. Devotional service, the science of Bhakti Yoga, carries one from this material world to the spiritual world. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunatam Itam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Rindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Manchakalpa Trubhyascha Kupa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So again, I'll just read the verse. Upon seeing the king engaged in such menial service, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very happy. Simply by rendering this service, the king received the mercy of the Lord. So we'll have to give a little bit of background to what has happened to build some context for this verse. So, before we go to there, I wanted to comment just about Srila Prabhupada's talking about the creeper of bhakti. So, the devotional service, this opportunity to render devotional service, it is an extraordinary privilege, and it is an extraordinarily fortunate position when the living entity comes in contact with the spiritual master and with Krishna. And by the mercy of Krishna, one gets a guru, and by the mercy of guru, one can come to know Krishna. So they work hand in hand. And it is very rare. It is explained in our Shastra how rare it is to come to the platform of devotional service. It's compared to the probability of a turtle who's swimming in a vast ocean. And then that turtle is coming up to get some air. And immediately, as it is about to break the plane of water, the turtle emerges, and there happens to be a log floating over its head. And exactly where the turtle's head is about to break the plane of the water, in that log, there's a hole. And that hole is the exact size of the turtle's head. And the turtle's head gets stuck in that log. The probability of that happening in a vast ocean is compared to the probability of the living entity coming in contact with devotional service. So when we put it in that context, we really get an understanding of how rare and how fortunate we all are to have come and have an opportunity to practice devotional service. And in this seed of devotional service, in this chapter 19 that's coming up, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to talk about this bhakti lata, and gives very important instructions about how to protect this bhakti, because it is a creeper. It is like a vine. When you have a new tree, a young tree, it is very flimsy and fragile. But as a tree grows, it becomes very strong, and you cannot tip it over, right? It becomes very strong. But a creeper can grow for 20, 30 years, but it remains very thin. With just a simple pair of scissors, you can cut the vine and it is gone. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu compares that our bhakti is like that. We may be in devotional service for 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, but we should understand that it is still very fragile, and that one has to protect it very, very carefully. And one should not become lazy and thinking, oh, I've arrived, it's all good. But one should be very mindful that my bhakti is a great privilege, it's a great fortune, and it's also very fragile. And one disciple, Srila Prabhupada, once asked him, Prabhupada, what's the difference between you and I? And Prabhupada, said that you can fall down, but I cannot. And the disciple was thinking, was expecting some, very elaborate shastric, explanation of the difference. And, he was stunned by the statement. And later that day, Srila Prabhupada was praying very intensely to the deities. And this disciple noted this mood of prayer. And after they had returned to Prabhupada's room, he asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, I noticed you were praying very sincerely. And do you mind sharing? What was your prayer? And Prabhupada said, I was praying that I not fall down. And the disciple was what? You told me earlier today that's the difference between you and I, that you cannot fall down. So why were you praying like this? And Prabhupada said, now you know why I will not. Because even Srila Prabhupada, this great Acharya, was very mindful of the fragility of devotional service. Of course, he was in no position to ever fall from the platform of pure devotional service, but still, out of his humility, he carried forth this understanding. So, we should protect our bhakti. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to explain in this 19th chapter that when you have a young plant, when you first plant it, you put a fence around it so that people will not step on it or animals not come in and eat it until it can grow. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, similarly, we have to put a fence around our bhakti creeper. And what is that fence? He explains, it is association. So association like this, getting together and discussing Krishna Katha, is a very potent means to protect our bhakti creeper and to enthuse it so that it can continue to grow. So I just wanted to comment on that. Srila Prabhupada references that at the end of the purport. So King Prataparudra. King Prataparudra was a great king. He was a king of Orissa, very, very powerful, very opulent, many servants and great wealth, like, all great kings, in possession of so many things. But King Prataparudra was a great devotee. He actually understood his position. Often when we are in a very opulent or prominent position, the mood of bhakti does not manifest. We become blinded by our material strengths, our material abilities, our wealth, and trying to enjoy all the material resources. We, forget our Supreme Lord. But King Prataparudra understood very clearly. He was a king today, and tomorrow he may be, a sweeper in the street. It is just a temporary grant from the material nature based on his past karma, and it is nothing that really has any real significance. But what has significance, what is really valuable in his possession, is not his great treasury, all the crown jewels, royal palaces, entourage, and queens. That is not of value. His valued possession was his devotion to Krishna. And so the king, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Jagannath Puri, became very happy because the Supreme Lord has come and is staying in his jurisdiction. And so the king, Prataparudra, had a great desire to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he was very staunch in his desire. And this is one of the first lessons we get from King Prataparudra. When some of the devotees presented to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, oh, this great King Prataparudra would like to meet you. He's a wonderful devotee. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu flatly denied, refused. No, I'll not meet, a materialistic person, a king who is interested only in wealth and wine and women. No, that is not for me. And so he forbade. And when King Prataparudra heard this news, he lamented severely. But he remained steadfast in his determination. He continued to desire very, very strongly. And he even was ready to give up his whole kingdom if he did not have this opportunity. So you see this staunch determination. We are also will face obstacles in devotional service. We will face things that will, give us setbacks, but we must remain determined, persevere. Like anything in life, to be successful, it requires some determination. Rupa Goswami says, "Utsahan nishchaya daryat tattat karma pravartanat." He gives these powerful tools for success in devotional service. And the first thing he says in Nectar of Instructions, one must be enthusiastic, one must have determination. So King Prataparudra was very determined. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was equally determined. At the last request, he said, "If you ask me again, I will leave Puri." And finally, all the devotees said, "Okay, we won't ask again. We don't want to risk Chaitanya Mahaprabhu leaving all of us." And so King Prataparudra was really, it was a hopeless situation for him to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is showing to us a very important lesson, because as we'll see, actually internally, he had great appreciation for the devotion of King Prataparudra. But externally, he was showing this very disciplined and rigid approach, which is, I'll not meet anyone who is in midst of opulences, interested in these sorts of things. And what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is showing us is the importance of association. That we should be very careful with our association. We should not think, sometimes we have some bad association or we do some activities and think, oh, what's the harm? It's just a little. Well, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is showing by his example that even the moment's association with someone who's attached to material affairs can completely sweep us away from our path of bhakti. So to set an example for all of us, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu staunchly refused to meet King Prataparudra. Now we can see that the king in this verse remained though steadfast in his devotion. And he picked up a very menial service. He was sweeping the streets of the chariot route. So Lord Jagannath's chariot was going to proceed from the temple to the Gundicha temple. And so he began to sweep the street, and it was sprinkling perfumed water everywhere. Now the king, being a king, he could have brought hundreds street sweepers and said, "Please clean the street." He could have ordered hundreds of golden brooms, and they could have arranged everything. But what we see here is the king himself was engaged in this menial service. And that pleased Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immensely. We know this street sweeping service, it is not such an illustrious service. If you go onto Indeed and you find a street sweeping job, you'll note that it is not a highly sought after profession. It ranks low on the desire poll, and commiserate with that, also the salary, the compensation is quite low. It is not a very highly paid profession, nor highly sought after. But when it comes to devotional service, there is no high and no low. Everything engaged in pleasing the Lord is an opportunity to please Krishna. And so King Prataparudra, by engaging, though he was a king, he showed his detachment. A king was not worried about his ego, about his reputation. Sometimes when we are doing some services, we feel, oh, I cannot be seen doing this service, picking up the trash or cleaning the toilets or doing something so-called low. But when it comes to devotional service, all these services are very, very pleasing. And we can see that by this menial service, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very, very pleased. And we may understand why this menial service was so pleasing. Well, King Prataparudra could have gone on the chariot, being the king, and offered a fan or a chamar, or done many other types of service. But he picked this service. And that was what was so pleasing to the Lord, because it showed his humility of willing to do even the so-called low service for the pleasure of Krishna. And we know that when one is willing to do that type of service, it actually is more pleasing to Krishna. And just a simple example of this, If we are having a function in our house, some party, and we've engaged some of our friends to help with that party in hosting all of the guests. And there are different services, services greeting the guests. Maybe someone is going to be honoring and tasting all the food preps to see if it's okay for the guest. That would be a good service. Someone that may be playing the music and arranging the entertainment. But there'll also be someone who needs to, clean the toilets and keep the bathrooms very nice and clean. So, as a host, we know a friend who is willing to do even that service for us must be very dear, must be very, very dear. And to us, we become very pleased with that friend who is willing to do even this, low profile, not glamorous service for us. So, Krishna is the same. When one is willing to do the service that nobody else is willing to do, but do it for his pleasure, he becomes even more pleased. So, our opportunity to render service, we should not put hierarchies. Oh, this is, pujari service, or this is some high service, and this is just some, menial service. Every service is an opportunity to please Krishna. And actually, the more menial service, Krishna knowing, that only my really dear friends would do such a service, he becomes very, very pleased. And so, in these different festival times and temple association we have, it's nice to search out for some menial service. It's very good for us. It's very humbling. It helps set us in the right mood, and we should know it is very pleasing to the Lord. So let's see now what proof or evidence we have of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's reciprocation for this service. So externally, he flatly refused to meet King Prataparudra. He said, absolutely not. But internally, he was very pleased. And so he bestowed very significant mercy on King Prataparudra. So as the procession, the Rath Yatra procession was beginning, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had very detailedly created 7 kirtan parties. And in each kirtan party, there was a lead singer, there were 5 repeaters, there were 2 mridanga players, there was 1 dancer. And like this, he split up all the associates into 7 kirtan parties. And these were like, you can imagine the kirtan party, one led by Swarup Damodar, one, dancing with Haridas Thakur, Advaita Acharya. I mean, just, Mukunda's singing and leading one kirtan party. You can imagine how ecstatic these kirtan programs must have been. So in each of those parties, they were positioned around the chariot and they were walking in procession. Now, of course, each kirtan party had one strong desire, that they wanted Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to dance in their party. And so each kirtan party was singing and playing very melodiously in hopes that Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, would come and dance in their kirtan party. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being the ever-present Paramatma in all of our hearts, he granted the desires, and actually he expanded himself into 7 times, and he was dancing in each and every one of the kirtan parties. But nobody in one kirtan party could see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was also dancing in the other. They thought, oh, we are special. Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing in our kirtan party. And they could not see that he was also dancing simultaneously in the other 7 parties. But a couple very select devotees could actually see how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing in all 7 kirtan parties. And you can take a guess. Who was one such very, very fortunate devotee? None other than King Prataparudra. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being pleased by this menial service, reciprocated with him by bestowing this very unique darshan, where he could see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dancing in all 7 kirtan parties. Even the great personalities like Swarup Damodar and Lord Nityananda even were not seeing this. Very few select devotees, and of which one was King Prataparudra. So we see the reciprocation. Our service to the Lord never goes unanswered. It is always reciprocated with. But the reciprocation actually continues even more extensively with King Prataparudra. So seeing this darshan, he was in ecstasy. Actually, this explained, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains in this chapter that the devotee, not the devotee, but the onlookers who were watching Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dance, they became so pleased and purified in the heart, all the contamination in the heart removed, and they went into ecstasy just watching Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dance. He was dancing so beautifully and so majestically that it captivated all of the onlookers, and they instantly became purified from all of their material attachments and became wonderful devotees, manifesting these ecstatic symptoms, just observing this very beautiful dance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So you can imagine King Prataparudra, he is not seeing it once, but he is seeing it 7 times over. He is getting like this amazing darshan. And so the chariot procession is continuing, and there's some very sweet exchanges between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Jagannath. Even Lord Jagannath himself, at one point, he stops his chariot and is in awe just watching Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dance. He would not move his chariot one step forward and just watching Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his transcendental dance. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami points out the irony of this. And he says, Lord Jagannath is looking at himself dancing, because Krishna is Lord Jagannath and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is also Krishna. So it was Krishna really watching himself dance in this very ecstatic way. And so Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, kind of points out this very ironic situation. But Lord Jagannath himself also went into ecstasy observing this dance. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being in the mood of Srimati Radharani, was really manifesting very wonderful symptoms. And Lord Jagannath, was eager. And so when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would go forward, then Lord Jagannath's chariot would continue. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu testing, will this Lord Jagannath really follow me? So sometimes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would go to the back behind the cart and sing, will Lord Jagannath continue without me, or will he stop? And of course, being in the mood of Srimati Radharani, Lord Jagannath could not leave Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so as soon as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would go to the back, Lord Jagannath's cart would stop. And like this, there was a competition of who would go forward. It's very beautifully described. I'm just summarizing in very short form, but please read this chapter 13. It's very, very sweet and very blissful to see this exchange between Lord Jagannath and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this, the pastime of the procession is continuing, and after some time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is dancing and jumping in the air, and everybody is worried he may hurt himself. And at one point, he completely passes out, faints from exhaustion. And there was no one there to catch him but King Prataparudra. Now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Ishvara Parama Krishna. He could have arranged anyone to be there. But at that time, all the associates were elsewhere occupied. And King Prataparudra was able to render this very beautiful service of catching Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very, very pleased. But externally again, when he saw, oh, who has caught me? King Prataparudra. No, I should not. And externally, he lamented. But we know it is only by his arrangement that King Prataparudra was afforded this very beautiful service of catching the Lord. So his reciprocation, again, for that menial service of sweeping the street with great humility, he was able to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in 7 dancing parties. He was able to catch him when he fell and nobody else was around to perform this service, and in obtaining the great soothing contact with the Supreme Lord. So this reciprocation is extraordinary, but it continues even more. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after the procession continues a little bit further, he becomes, in his pastime, in his lila, tired. Of course, it's the Supreme Lord. He is not tired, but he's performing this pastime. And he goes into a nearby garden right off the main road. And in this garden, there is an elevated platform. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is laid flat on the garden, exhausted. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya tells King Prataparudra, okay, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is gone in his garden. You go into this garden. You change your dress. You go into simple Vaishnava attire, and you go. And so King Prataparudra immediately abandoned his royal garb. We know that the royal garments are a sign of status and prestige. But King Prataparudra was fully detached to the royal opulences. He didn't care anything about that. He was simply doing that duty to serve the Lord, but actually had no attachment to it. So he quickly discarded all of his royal garments and put on simple Vaishnava attire and entered this garden to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there he obtained the unimaginable service. What service? He went and began to press the feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he was massaging the feet while Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was resting. And then he began to recite some very beautiful verses from Srimad Bhagavatam. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went into ecstasy. He was so happy hearing these verses. And we see by that how pure and how wonderful a devotee King Prataparudra was. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would not hear verses from anyone. Swarup Damodar was like the gatekeeper. Anybody who wanted to present anything to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first had to get approved by Swarup Damodar. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, when he wanted to establish, the greatness of a personality, he would have them, recite and hear different verses. So the fact that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself was going into this wonderful ecstatic mood, hearing the nectar from King Prataparudra, we understand, the very high position in devotion that King Prataparudra had. Yes, he had a high material position, but that is not of relevance, at least according to King Prataparudra. He was simply focused on serving his Lord. And so this exchange was very, very sweet, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was being so pleased. And of course, King Prataparudra was so ecstatic being able to render this very sweet service. And what in reciprocation for? That menial service he was willing to render. And so we see how Krishna reciprocates with our service. It is not, that we serve and serve and serve, and Krishna is, aloof and does nothing. But every service that we perform, there is great reciprocation that we get. And King Prataparudra saw this. And there's 2 points that we can note from this. One, often we go to the Lord, and we go to the Lord with so many desires. Oh my Lord, please fulfill this desire, this desire. And we have a long list of our request list, and we render service. But you can see King Prataparudra actually, he was rendering that service as stripping the sweet with no expectation in return. He was not, oh, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is coming, somebody grab me a broom and let me start sweeping. That was not his mood. His mood was, let me serve the Supreme Lord with no expectation in return. And when we serve with no expectation in return, actually then Krishna showers so much mercy, more than we could ever dream of. Because if you can imagine King Prataparudra, do you think in a million years he could have dreamt up of this type of request? Oh, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, let me see you dancing in all 7 parties. Oh, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, let me catch you when you faint. Let me massage your legs while you're resting in the garden. No, at best he could have maybe dreamed up, let me have some 1-hour association with you and, enjoy your presence. But we can see that actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reciprocated far beyond what even King Prataparudra could have asked for. And so it's instructive for us when, Rupa Goswami says, Anyabilashita shunyam gyanakamari navatam, that this pure devotional service is anyabilashita shunyam, no desires. When we have no desires in approaching the service of the Lord, actually then Krishna reciprocates far beyond what we could even dream up in our desires. So don't think that Krishna will take that service and think, oh, my devotee's desire of nothing, okay, let me be. No, actually seeing this unmotivated service is so pleasing to the Lord that he reciprocates far beyond our ability to even dream up. And this is what we see with King Prataparudra. The other dynamic we see when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was receiving this massage from King Prataparudra, a very important dynamic, that all the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had then come into the garden and they were seated around this platform. And watching King Prataparudra render this very sweet service to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you can imagine what our mood might be like. Maybe we'd wonder, oh, I wish I was there. Why him? Why not me? But actually, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains that the devotees were in ecstasy. They were so happy seeing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu happy and also seeing King Prataparudra receive this great mercy and blessings. This is the mood of a devotee. A devotee does not become envious of someone else's mercy. When some devotee is getting great mercy, they become enthused and happy. Oh wow, this special soul is getting such wonderful mercy. But in our impure, contaminated state, sometimes we lament, oh, why not me? Don't they know this person has done this, that, and the other? And I've done all these wonderful things. Why they are getting this? This sentiment arises. But actually, as we read Chaitanya Charitamrita, we see over and over again the devotees become ecstatic when others are receiving mercy. And this also becomes very, very pleasing to Krishna. And don't worry, Krishna knows what is in all of our hearts, everything that is happening. So, when we render our service, the mood of service is critical. And this is like the core of what we get from this pastime, is that King Prataparudra's mood of service was extraordinary. He could have been sweeping the streets thinking, why I have to do this, begrudgingly sweeping the street, putting a smile on his face externally, but in the core of his heart, maybe begrudgingly. Or maybe he could have been doing the service just to try to draw the attention of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to impress him. Sometimes when we are doing our service, these ulterior motives come in. But actually, we should know that Krishna, sitting in our heart, he knows the inner mood of our service. And King Prataparudra, his only motive was to please Krishna. So when we approach our service, whatever it may be, remember, no hierarchies. Actually, the more menial service, the more opportunity to please. But whatever service we do, the main ingredient in that service is our love. If we are making chapatis for Krishna, he is not looking at how round the chapatis are, how fluffy they are, how much ghee has been put on them. He is looking at how much love has gone into making those chapatis. So the main ingredient that we can meditate on when we are rendering service is this ingredient of love, the opportunity to please Krishna. And a devotee is willing to do whatever is pleasing to Krishna, whatever is pleasing. And that is the mood we can try to approach in our day-to-day service. Whatever service we are given in the temple community, in the different sanghas, whatever it may be, do it with great enthusiasm, determination, and desire to please Krishna. And know he will reciprocate far beyond even what we can dream of, as we see King Prataparudra receiving this extraordinary reciprocation. Final comment I'll make. When we talk about desires, having no desires in our service. So sometimes this question comes up that, we are living entities, we are atoms. So we have desires, we have different, ideas. So what is it that we can desire in our service to the Lord that is beneficial for us? So when we talk about no desires, we're talking about no material desires, but it is good to have spiritual desires. Oh Krishna, let me render service to you. Help me free myself from my, material attachments so that I can serve you more enthusiastically. Help me, overcome my envy of others. It is, putting salt in the taste of the sweetness of bhakti for me. These desires that for purification that allow us to serve Krishna more sincerely. Those are very good desires to have. So we can cultivate our material desires in devotional life to spiritual desires. And in that way, Krishna will see what is in our heart and help us make progress in the path of devotional service. So this is just a short synopsis of this very beautiful pastime from chapter 13. Again, verse number 18 of Madhya Lila Chaitanya Charitamrita, the title of the chapter, The Lord's Dancing at Rath Yatra. And we discussed the topic of King Prataparudra and his great menial service that earned him extraordinary compensation in the form of such mercy that he could have never have dreamed of. And we see while Chaitanya Mahaprabhu externally was showing for our education the importance of association, that he was saying no, he would not meet. Internally, he was very pleased and arranged very unique mercy for King Prataparudra. So let us approach our service trying to follow in the steps of King Prataparudra and also attract the attention and love of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. So
So,
any
yeah,
questions?
thank you, Prabhuji, for a wonderful class as always,
Yes.
and nice. I heard some analogies I never heard earlier. Also, very interesting and excellent analogies you quoted earlier. Then nice example also, chapati and all. That's wonderful. So hopefully, and it was very simple class, and it has gone straight to my head. At least, hopefully, it will be the same in the case with all our devotees. Many devotees missed it. Of course, no, our devotee friend is now it is recording in the YouTube. Hopefully, that will be available to rest of those who could not attend. So before we, yeah, now it is open to question answer. Prabhuji has 10 minutes time, 10 or 12 minutes.
Yes.
So Prabhuji, before anybody starts, I would like to ask you: is that fair to compare Prabhupada's mood with King Prataparudra's mood? I find a lot of similarities the way you told. So, what is your thought on that, Prabhuji?
Yeah, I mean, Srila Prabhupada, you think, he was a great, great acharya, anointed by his godbrothers in the Gaudiya month in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Yet you see, when it came to printing BBTs, the periodical, he was performing all the service. He would go and buy the paper. He was doing all the typesetting. He would go to the printer's office and arrange everything and get the printed. Then he would carry all the printed. Then he would personally go and sit in all the different markets and distribute these. He was doing everything. Even when he came to New York, um, when he was having his first programs, he would invite all the young boys. They would come and they would have a program. He would serve them prasad, and then they would all leave. And he would be left. He would clean everything, wash all the vessels, get everything ready, clean the room, and then back again the next day. And he never complained. He never complained. So he had this very whatever it took. Sometimes we see only the more later pastimes of great opulence and Srila Prabhupada being really adorned and worshipped by his disciples. But we should not lose sight of what happened the prior 30, 40 years where Srila Prabhupada was performing all kinds of service. And so, yes, there are some great parallels given that mood of devotion, despite so much opportunity. I mean, Srila Prabhupada was he was given the title of Bhakti Vedanta by his peers. Right? So he was a very illustrious devotee. Yet he took on all services. So yes, nice parallels. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. And one interesting thing comes in mind when you make unmotivated, service, or annavilasatam sunyam, whatever you said. When Krishna starts reciprocating, there is no end to it. We can see in Prabhupada's life. So he had no expectation, as you said. He used to sell his magazine in the street in the Bombay and other places. He go and begs people, just like nobody. But when Krishna reciprocates in that mood, there is no comparison. Nobody, even it is very hard to see maybe another thousands of years anybody coming like Prabhupada with that much empowered by Krishna and making so much. Probably no, not probably. He had no desire also. That's the one thing I could get. Then
Yeah.
second thing, as you are saying, even you, without your knowledge, you do slightest service for Krishna, it doesn't go unnoticed. It reminds me about Prakasananda Saraswati in
Mm.
Banaras, when he just called him, "Don't sit there, please come and sit with us." That itself, gained Prabhupada's mercy. So Lord is so merciful. It is so nice, Prabhuji, to hear again these topics, and it's all jewels. And I don't think any king will be king Aurangzeb, Babur, or so many kings were there, even Shivaji and all. They will be remembered that much. To eternity. Prataparudra will be, or Indradumna Maharaj will be remembered. Nobody will be remembered like Prabhupada. His name is not going anywhere. So that's amazing. We fail to understand actually, Prabhuji, but maybe we have less mercy. One day it will come. So thank you so much. So now it is open to question. Feel free to ask any questions. You will get interesting, very convincing answer. Please go ahead. We have a lot of devotees from India. They are really making up for some missing devotees in America. So please go ahead, Ram Reddy Prabhu, Sushil Prabhu, maybe Lakshmanaran Prabhu is very much enthusiastic. Aditya Prabhu, any questions from anybody? Please go ahead. We have 7 more minutes. Prabhuji will have other engagements. As you heard, he has come from a temple picnic. That's before celebrating Rath Yatra. They are preparing the mood, hopefully. So please go ahead. So anybody has any questions, anything related to devotional service or anything you feel today's talk, please go ahead. Yes, Ram Reddy Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Yeah. Dhanavad Pranam Prabhuji. Sorry if I ask something wrong. Prabhuji, sometimes, always as Rathayatra Prabhu was giving introduction, you manage both your business and also, you are so elevated in your spiritual journey. As a starter, I always get confused between my work life and spiritual life. When I was doing my work, I get thoughts about my spiritual life. I feel happy for that. I can remember Krishna. But when I'm doing I want to do chanting, then I get all my problems of my work come disturbing. That I don't want to. So Prabhuji, as a starter, is it okay that when I do chanting, I can get all kind of thing in my mind? Also, like when I'm doing other things, is it okay, or how can I overcome that, Prabhuji? Thank you, Prabhuji.
Nice question. Thank you. This chanting is, first of all, let us remember, good quality chanting is a lifelong journey. It is not something where all of a sudden the switch is going to flip and I've got, Shuddha Nam. It's a lifelong journey of getting a little bit better each day. And, the concentration, the mind, the mind is very fickle, but it's a simple formula. When the mind wanders away, just bring it back. And it's natural that, the mind will wander to the things that are going on in our day-to-day life, that are going on in various activities. But we're just trying to bring it back. And that's why, the more regulated we can become in our chanting, the more we'll be able to control the mind. And when I mean regulated, few aspects of this, having a good prescribed time of the day in which we chant. Ideally, early in the morning is best. That's the best, but based on your situation, finding kind of a set time that this is my chanting time, and slowly the mind actually becomes trained. Okay, this fellow is going to be focused on his chanting right now. I'll bother him later. But we become somewhat regulated, and in our chanting. Chanting out loud is very powerful because it engages the ears. And so we should focus on just trying to hear the names. Don't focus on so many other things. It's too hard. And just focus on hearing the 16 names of the mantra, the 32 syllables. And that will help bring the mind into control. And then, in terms of our, material affairs and our spiritual affairs, Ultimately, they're all spiritual affairs if we have understood the teachings of Lord Krishna to Arjuna. Right? Arjuna is shooting arrows in the battle. And that's, you can say on the one hand, that's his job as a Kshatriya. But actually, we know that is Anyabilashi Tashan, that is pure devotional service because he is following the instructions of Krishna. Right. So, when we go into our job and we're working in our, profession, well, we are working in our profession to earn some income. And the question is, what are we doing with that income? Are we maintaining our family and our home and a spiritual life and helping to propagate, these Rath Yatra festivals and spreading Srila Prabhupada's message? Or are we maintaining, our income for our sense enjoyment? And so, to the extent that we can, perform these activities with the purpose of advancing our devotional service, then the activity of work is also part of bhakti, right? Because the goal is serving Krishna. So, the more we can dovetail all of our activities into Krishna consciousness, not just in words, but in true, action in heart, then those thoughts all become also part of Krishna consciousness. And so, that's the way, and we have to sometimes balance that. We don't want to pursue, our professional career so aggressively that we don't have time for good chanting, a little bit of reading of Srila Prabhupada's books and things like that. But being and pursuing a career and pursuing it with vigor is not frowned upon. It's actually encouraged. But doing it with Krishna in the center is the key. So maybe a little bit broader answer than your specific question, but I hope that helps.
Oh, thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Ram Reddy Prabhu, for nice question. So it's applicable to all of us.
Yes.
And Prabhuji, actually, Ram Reddy Prabhu reminded me, probably he might be interested to ask you also, just to, in the beginning I was mentioning, how do you manage your time, share your devotional service? Because many youngsters are, they're confused because they're alone, they have to cook, they have to eat, they have to go to work, they have to even start doing difficult, they don't have transportation and a lot of difficulties they face. So they are not able to, they are very much interested but not able to manage this type of situation. In your alone, you have to cook your food, offer to Krishna, go even by, to the office and sit there late because you are newcomer, then you have to put little extra work, then you have to maybe start walking or catch the bus, come there. So in this type of things, lot of disturbance comes. Is prayer going to help, or how do we manage, or how you managed your time, early days? Of course, you are all the time with your parents, maybe hostel afterwards or whatever, school. But how somebody will manage this type of situation,
Yeah,
uh, in context? How
that
do you manage your time with, managing so many people? Business is complicated. Of course, things will come automatically when you are Krishna conscious, solution will come. But dealing with people is complicated, plus your spiritual journey, family. How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing is easy. It is not like, oh, if I put my hand into my bead bag, all of a sudden the business is going to be successful and we won't face problems and stress and all that. That's not the way it works. But the time. My father used to tell me always when I would tell him, I am busy in university, I don't have time for it. He says, listen, it's not a matter of time, it's a matter of taste. If you have a strong enough taste for it, you'll make the time. So the time is rarely the issue. It's more how strongly am I desiring it. So we pray to Krishna that, Krishna, help intensify my taste, my desire to serve. And when we have a strong desire, Krishna will make the time for us. He'll see our situation and he'll make the time. And our important point is, what do we do with the time that we have? So, yes, we have a certain segment of 168 hours in a week, and I have so many different responsibilities. That takes up certain responsibility. But the question is, whatever gap is there, what am I doing with that time? If I maximize that time for Krishna, he will reciprocate. But he may test us. He may give us some, challenges in our schedule and see how sincere are we, in not wasting even a moment of time. And Srila Prabhupada was just an expert at this. You see, he didn't waste 1 minute in anything. If you look at the volume of books he wrote, it's actually impossible for a single person to do. But then you add on top of that building 108 temples. In one lifetime, you might build one temple, and it's like he built 108 in just 12 years. And on top of that, he traveled the world and trained up thousands of disciples. So where was the time for him? Actually, mathematically or materially, it's not humanly possible. But Krishna was reciprocating, was empowering. So yes, we will face circumstances in our day-to-day life in which time becomes a constraint, but let us be very conscious of what I'm doing with the time that I do have. And if we maximize that, Krishna will start to free things up. And there's always ways to, become more efficient in my time. And if I'm searching those out, it will come. But if we fall back on the crutch that, oh, I'm busy, then we won't make progress actually. So yes, Krishna will hear your prayers and try to intensify the taste. When there's a will, there's a way. Right? That's a saying that we have, and Krishna will make the way happen. And Srila Prabhupada is a great example, and many others. We may say, oh, well, that's Srila Prabhupada. No, Krishna reciprocates with everyone, not just the full exalted acharyas, but also with all of us as well. He'll reciprocate.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for wonderful answer. So it will be helpful very much to all of us. So any other last question? We are 3 minutes past the time.
I have time if you have questions, so don't worry.
Okay. Oh, that's good, because you will be tired, Prabhuji. I thought, yeah.
No.
So yeah, you are at home. So
question answer is my favorite part of the discussion. So whatever.
That is very helpful, Prabhuji. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know whether anybody has any other question or at this point. Please go ahead. People are shy to devotees are shy to ask question. Aditya Prabhu, do you have anything?
No, Prabhuji. Everything's clear.
Okay, thank you.
Prabhuji, if it is okay, I do have one more question. Sorry.
Yep. Oh, please.
Prabhuji, I heard as part of your bhakti process, you want to go progress. If your progression needs to be good, then you more and more interact with Vaishnavas. And also, Prabhuji, again, this relates back to my old question. As a starter, how can I start moving away from my, I cannot say Vaishnavas, because in Bhagavad Gita himself, like Krishna says, you have to see Krishna in everywhere. Yeah. Animals, plants, like that. So if that is the case, Prabhuji, if you want to see Krishna in everyone, how can we differentiate Vaishnavas, Avaishnavas, and how can I move away from my friends or whoever, like my family, because they are not into the spiritual path? Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah, no, it's a nice, very practical question. And we should be careful not to become fanatical with this. So remaining practical and not fanatical with these sorts of recommendations. So when we think about association, first of all, association means to become inspired by. So we should be mindful of who I'm taking inspiration from. In the office, I cannot just associate with, I cannot interact only with those who are Krishna conscious, because there are far and few between. So I must interact with my coworkers, with my boss, whatever. But we do so to the extent to perform the job functions required. But we be mindful not to take inspiration from. But that when we become in association of devotees, association of devotee doesn't mean I'm just physically together, but it means that we exchange relationships. Rupa Goswami explains in Nectar of Instruction that there are loving exchanges between devotees, and that we help each other and we become enthused by them. So association is a proactive approach of trying to draw inspiration from. So it's not just being in the midst of. So, when we are, in our material affairs, we have to carry those out. But we carry them out in a means that, I maintain these relationships to the extent necessary to continue my, work in this regard. But I'm not going above and beyond. And that when I have an opportunity to associate with devotees, that I really take good association. And Rupa Goswami talks about Nectar of Instruction that three levels of a devotee. The Kanishta Adhikari. The Kanishta Adhikari, cannot distinguish between the devotees. They only see Krishna in the temple. So they often will become, not respectful to the devotees. The Madhya Adhikari, the middle level, they have good awareness. So they are very compassionate to the fallen. They make friends with their peers and they serve their superiors. So they know how to reciprocate with the different types of devotees. But the Uttama Adhikari, actually, because he is a Mahabhagavat, he sees Krishna everywhere, as Krishna, as you quoted from Bhagavad Gita. And so he cannot even preach to anyone because he sees everybody as a devotee. He sees everyone as Krishna's part and parcel. And so, in that state, actually, the guru comes down to the Madhyama Adhikari to begin preaching. So, but for our purpose, for practical purpose now, we look to devotees for that inspiration. And in our other relationships that we have to maintain them for different purposes. And when it comes to family, Prabhupada was very practical here. He said, don't create animosity in your family due to your Krishna consciousness. If your family is not so enthusiastic about your devotional service, join the club. I mean, we go back in the history of devotional life. How many families, right? Raghunath Das Goswami's, had his father hired 5 guards just to protect him so he would not run away to go meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Right? So this family objections will be there. But don't create animosity in this mood, but simply try to remain consistent with our service and know that our service to Krishna is also beneficial to our family. They are benefiting from our devotional life, as Prahlad Maharaj was told by Lord Nrsingadev. When Prahlad Maharaj asked for his father to be forgiven, Lord Nrsingadev said, you becoming my devotee, I've already delivered 21 generations prior. Right? So, whatever we are doing in our devotional life, it is beneficial for our family, but don't do so in a way that creates animosity within the family, but also don't compromise our beliefs. So you have to kind of balance and carry both with us in hand and try to maintain at least a point of neutrality. Maybe our family won't accept and participate, no problem, but at least try to bring them to the point of neutrality where they are not negative towards it. Sure, they may not themselves be inspired, and in ourselves, we carry, again, a very peaceful, calm mood, and that quality will become also attractive. And they'll ultimately see, wow, my son, my daughter, my child, they are practicing and they're developing these nice qualities. If we get into this, very aggressive mode, then what qualities are we really gaining from our devotion? So that's how we can approach, different personalities, whether it be family, friends, relationships in devotional life. I hope that helped.
Oh, thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare, thank you.
So yeah, thank you, Prabhuji, so much. And after a long time, it was a very inspiring and instructive class. And thank you, Ram Reddy Prabhu, asking questions that's well applicable to everybody. So I cannot appreciate anymore this type of wonderful questions and opening up, because this is called honest inquiry. Unless we ask sincerely, we don't get to hear these things. Even if we read 10 times or 100 times, it doesn't go to our head. So this type of things are very practical, and asking some genuine questions and doubts which everybody is facing, and really, I appreciate asking this type of question, Prabhu. So Prabhuji, I think I don't expect any other question unless somebody comes forward quickly. We'll close here, and again, thank you, Prabhuji, for your time. We are really grateful. I request devotees to unmute and say 3 times big Haribol for Prabhuji, and hopefully we will hear from him shortly in the near future. So just to unmute. Haribol. 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 Thank you, Prabhuji. Have a good evening.
Dandavat pranams.
Dandavat pranam, Prabhuji. Hare
Dandavat pranam.
Thank you.
Haribol.
Thank you all.
Haribol.